Okay, so we're here with Congressman Joe Barton to vet him with respect to the upcoming congressional campaign. My name is Andrew Pizzielli. This is John Lively, and we're going to be asking a total of 30 questions, each categorized by the Tea Party principles: the rule of law, limited government, fiscal responsibility, national sovereignty, personal responsibility, and in God we trust. So that's how they're categorized. I'll be initially asking the first set of questions, and then John will ask the next two sets, and then we'll alternate thereafter.
Great, let's go.
All right. So the first question: do you have a strong working knowledge of the Constitution of the United States?
I would say I do. I'm not an expert on it, but I've read it a number of times, and I understand what it's about.
Okay, so for example, how many articles are there in the Constitution?
I'm going to say 5.
Okay, and how many amendments?
Over 20.
Okay. Okay, question 2.
Hey, Kristen. Hey, Alex.
What does swearing an oath to protect the Constitution mean to you?
It means in my official duties as a congressman, or I've not been in the military, but had I been in the military, that I'm going to defend and protect the United States of America against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and to the largest extent possible try to uphold the principles that are enumerated and enunciated in the Constitution.
Great. Question 4. Whose powers, I'm sorry, question 3. How do you interpret the 9th and 10th Amendments to the Constitution? And I can read those. Amendment 9, the enumeration in the Constitution of certain rights shall not be construed to deny or disparage others retained by the people. And then Amendment 10, the power is not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited by it to the states, are reserved to the states respectively or to the people.
Well, when the Constitution was written and was ratified back in the 1700s, there was a big debate about the role of government, and our government, especially the government that was established by the Constitution, was really the first one, I guess maybe since the Greek Republic, maybe the Roman Republic, that the power really did vest with the people. And so those two amendments are trying to make sure that the powers the federal government have are the powers that are enumerated in the Constitution, with the ultimate, any power that's not enumerated remains with the people, and any power in terms of the state versus federal relationship, if it's a government power and it's not enumerated, it's at the state level and not at the federal level.
Excellent, thank you. Question 4, which is related to question 3. Whose powers are limited by the 10th Amendment?
You'd say the federal government's power.
5. Can you think of ways to improve enforcement of the 10th Amendment?
Well, I think that just the vigilance of the people is the best way. To some extent, citizen lawsuits in the state, when the states think their powers have been usurped, they can use litigation against the federal government too also.
Question 6. Currently, are there any laws, bills, acts, statutes, or ordinances, or resolutions which conflict with each other that dilute our freedoms? And how would they do so, or how do they do so?
Well, the answer is there's obviously lots of contradictions in the law. the healthcare, the contradictions within the Obama healthcare law between different agencies, as to how they dilute I don't really know how to answer how they would dilute. They create to some extent a competition between various federal agencies in the environmental issue and then the regulatory scheme and some of these permits. The Keystone Pipeline, it took 13 different agencies and 12 signed off, but one did in the State Department. So it can make it more difficult to get anything done. It can make it more difficult to protect your private property, to use it as you see fit. It can probably inhibit people exercising their natural rights because they're afraid that the competing jurisdictional issues that might come into play. Some of my folks in the Tea Party have said that the IRS is asking for a lot of information just in the last month or so. And I think that's somewhat of an attempt to intimidate the Tea Party.
Great. Question 7. According to the Constitution, which branch of government has the sole power to declare war?
The Congress of the United States.
Question 8.
Which is a legislative branch.
Legislative branch. Question 8. How would you define judicial activism?
Well, the simple definition is the judiciary acting outside of the specific powers granted to it in the Constitution, or in the case of the state judiciaries, the powers granted by the state. And it's usually exhibited by trying to usurp the legislative function, as opposed to simply ruling on the law.
Great, thank you. Now to John.
We're going to move on to a category called limited government. What is your position regarding term limits for Congress?
I've never supported term limits for Congress.
Okay. What is your position regarding results of government stimulus spending?
Say that again?
What is your position regarding the results of government stimulus spending?
Regarding the results?
Yeah.
Well, I voted against the stimulus package, both under Bush and under Obama. But with regards to the results of it, I'm not sure. I mean, you can oppose the spending, but you would hope that once it's spent, that it's had some positive influence for somebody. I don't think it did.
Okay.
I don't think it did. But we've certainly added tremendously to the national debt without much, as far as I can tell, result to show from it, to come from it.
Okay. Question number 11. What is your position regarding soft law through executive orders?
Soft law? I don't know the term soft law.
Well, what is your position regarding executive orders?
In some cases, an executive order is necessary to implement the legislative law that's been passed. When President Obama executes an executive order to go around or to contradict a specific law that's passed, then it's wrong. The Congress can trump any executive order if the Congress is united and wants to. What happens is, especially when you have divided government, you've got a Republican majority in the House, a Democrat majority in the Senate, and a Democratic president. So you can't, in this case, the president and the Democrats in the Senate can't pass new liberal laws because you can't get them through the House. So they'll issue an executive order which the Senate won't contradict, and the House can try to countermand it, but then it can't get that through the Senate. So in divided government, as long as one part of the Congress supports whatever the president's intent is, an executive order can serve as a de facto law. If the Congress is of a different political party, we can overturn it. And what you've got right now is divided government, so that a liberal president with a liberal Senate can do things that a conservative House majority opposes.
Number 12, do you believe in federal affirmative action policies? Why or why not?
I think at the time that some of the affirmative action was passed, it may have been helpful. I don't think it's helpful now, and I don't think it's necessary. It's difficult, though, to overturn the policies because they've been under some sort of implementation for the last 40 years, I guess, maybe 50 years. You've got a Supreme Court case right now on admission policies, I think the University of Texas at Austin, on affirmative action in terms of acceptance into their, I don't know if it's their undergraduate program or their graduate programs. They've probably outlived their usefulness.
Question number 13. What are the benefits and flaws of the federal government's involvement in education?
Well, the benefit would be that the huge sums of money that go into the Pell Grant program allow numerous students who choose to get an education and actually use the money for educational purposes to get an education that they otherwise wouldn't be able to. The flaws are almost too numerous to mention. All the mandates that come with it, the intrusion, especially at the local level, and educate in elementary and pre-college courses and things like that. I think that education is primarily a state and local issue, and at the federal level should be limited to loans for students and research grants for true research at the university level.
Okay. We're going to move on to fiscal responsibility.
Good thing.
Question number 14. Is it okay that our country is no longer using the gold standard?
Is it okay?
Yeah. And of course, why or why not?
Well, I'm not an economist. A gold standard, or any standard, you could have a standard based on peanuts, I guess. The value of any standard is that it limits the ability to inflate the currency. It puts limits over time on the ability to spend money that you don't have. The United States was on the gold standard until the 1930s. I think when Franklin Roosevelt, took the country off the gold standard. I'm not enough of an economist to say in the modern era whether you absolutely have to have a standard. I think if we had a gold standard in this country, once you've got it established, it would be beneficial because it would make it more difficult to run deficits. Not impossible, but much more difficult. I think it's very unlikely you're going to see us reestablish the gold standard. I don't see the political dynamic being there.
Question 15. Do you believe the Comprehensive Annual Financial Report, the CAFR, is a good tool to measure whether a governmental program is working or not?
I think it could be. Depends on how it's evaluated and how comprehensive it is, and the intent of the people that look at the report. You know, if you have a conclusion and it reinforces your conclusion, and you want to reform that particular agency, yeah, it's an excellent tool. But if you just do the report and put it up on a shelf, it's not going to do any good. Anything though that tries to increase accountability of any of the federal agencies, at least potentially, is a good thing.
Okay. Question 16. Should the Federal Reserve be abolished, and would doing so harm or help the economy?
I don't think we should abolish the Federal Reserve. I think they should be more accountable. I think you should have an audit. I think you should probably change the terms of the governors so that they're shorter. But I don't think that the Federal Reserve was created to try to create an independent, a financial institution that was independent of the short-term political winds of the country, that they could act for the common good, not being subject to short-term electoral pressures. You know, whether it's been done perfectly is a debatable proposition, but I don't know that we would want to go back and abolish the Federal Reserve and give the President of the United States or the Congress total authority to set monetary policy. I mean, having an independent agency probably has paid benefits over time.
Question number 17. What are your thoughts on the U.S. government's fiscal responsibility?
I don't understand the question. The federal government's fiscal
Should
responsibility.
we live within our means?
Well, the answer to that's yes.
Okay.
Now, you talk about fiscal performance.
So what are your thoughts regarding that? Why aren't we, or why are we?
Well, when the Republicans took over the House in the mid-90s, we did get 4 or 5 balanced budgets in a row, at least on a cash flow basis. We haven't had that since then. We haven't had a budget deficit under $1 trillion the last 3 years. And so long as Obama's president, I don't think they're going to. No nation is so rich that you can run huge deficits indefinitely. And while we are the richest nation in the world, we're subject to the laws of economics like any other entity. And I am more concerned about that than almost any other federal issue. My first act was to introduce a balanced budget amendment to the Constitution, and I was the author of the Contract with America tax limitation balanced budget amendment. So I'm very, very dedicated and committed to doing everything within our political system we can do to get the budget balanced and to keep it balanced. So I support a constitutional amendment requiring a balanced budget. I support budget reform. I support giving the president some sort of line item veto. I would support zero-based budgeting. I would support a 2-year budget. I mean, it's just, we've been so rich for so long, and historically the budget deficits have not been a huge part of as large a percentage of our GDP, so that the economy could withstand it. But at $1 trillion to $1.5 trillion per year, it's it's not exponential, it's geometrical, the damage that's done to the economy. And if we don't change in the next 4 or 5 years, I think you could easily see some sort of catastrophic collapse of the entire economic system. And if that happens, you put a real stress on our whole democratic process. So I'm very worried about that.
Question number 18. What is the International Monetary Fund, or IMF, and how are they using taxpayer monies to pledge a bailout of the euro?
Well, the International Monetary Fund is an international system that governments voluntarily join or voluntarily participate in. And they do a number of things. They can give specific loans and grants to economies or governments around the country, around the world, excuse me. The United States is a part of it. Theoretically, they bring some discipline to the system. As to, what was the question about Greece?
Well, it said, what is the International Monetary Fund, or IMF, and how are they using taxpayer monies to pledge a bailout of the euro?
Well, the U.S. participates in the International Monetary Fund. I am not specifically familiar with how the IMF has worked within this Greek bailout that's just been announced in the last several weeks. But if the IMF is a part of that, then indirectly United States taxpayer dollars would subsidize it, because we do participate in the IMF.
Okay. This is question number 19. What is the Bank of International Settlement, and what authority does it hold?
I don't know anything about the Bank of International Settlement.
Okay, the next section is national sovereignty. Question 20. Define public-private partnerships being implemented in many communities across the nation, and give some examples.
Answer the question again.
Define public-private partnerships that are being implemented in many communities across the nation, and give some examples.
Well, I know what a public-private partnership is. It's when a governmental entity agrees with a private group or individual, maybe even a private corporation, on some common goal and common project. I can't think off the top of my head of any specific examples, but if Ennis Business Farms, that's headquartered in Ennis, Texas, wanted to do an educational program with the Ennis Independent School District and provide volunteers from their company, or provide dollars for tutors, or provide dollars to buy materials that could be used in the school that the school system wouldn't have otherwise, that would be an example of a public-private partnership. We've got the Hope Clinic over in Waxahachie. It was established by private individuals that now the county, Ellis County, has signed a contract to provide low-income indigent care, that the county, using county funds to provide health care for low-income individuals. That's another example here in the county. I'm not sure that's exactly what you're talking about. Those are two examples of a public-private partnership.
Question 21. Taxpayer funds are being designated for environmentalism across the country. For example, Solyndra through the Federal Financing Bank. What legislation would you author or propose regarding this action?
Read the question again.
Taxpayer funds are being designated for environmentalism across the country. For example, Solyndra through the Federal Financing Bank. What legislation would you author or propose regarding this action?
Well, Solyndra it was and is a private corporation that received a loan guarantee from the Obama administration for a little over $500 billion, and then declared bankruptcy. The Bush administration had rejected that particular loan guarantee, and the Obama administration revived it and approved it on an expedited basis. I don't know that you could say Solyndra was specifically an environmental project, although it was solar energy is called clean energy. As to what you can do, you can hold the EPA accountable. We can repeal some of these loan guarantees. We can put more restrictions on how federal research dollars are spent. We can require the various agencies to report to the Congress on a more specific basis. And ironically, by repealing, at least in the House, the use of earmarks, we've probably given the federal agencies a little bit more discretion here, because they've got more money that's not directly obligated by the House and the Senate.
Great. Question 22. Discuss your thoughts on the electric power smart grid.
Well, the concept of a smart grid is an electrical system that tries to, by giving feedback, more efficiently allocate electricity. Tell you how it's used, when it's used, the cost of using it at certain times of the day. So you put computers and sensors and monitors. Reverse metering, which can be a part of a smart grid, gives people the ability to generate electricity independently, to put electricity into the system and get reimbursed for it. So in theory, a smart grid should conserve energy, conserve electricity. There's been some utilities that have tried to force customers to use these so-called smart meters, and the customer doesn't want to use it. And my opinion is, and I'm the sponsor or the chief architect of the Energy Power Act, of Energy Policy Act of 2005, where there's some language on smart metering and stuff in the federal law, that it's to give consumers who choose to utilize it that option. It's not to give the utility some sort of the ability to coerce it. And I know that's an issue that's percolating in some parts of the country.
Thank you. Last question under national sovereignty is question 23. What is Agenda 21? Why do you support or reject it?
I don't know what Agenda 21 is.
Next category, personal responsibility. What values will we be voting for if we vote for you?
Well, I've been in Congress for I'm in my 28th year, so I'm a sixth-generation native Texan, a product of the public school system of Texas from first grade through Texas A&M. I do have a master's degree from Purdue, which is in Indiana. My lifetime conservative rating is well over 90% in every category. I'm a fiscal conservative, I'm a social conservative, I'm an economic conservative. I think I'm a freedom conservative. But what people get if they vote for me is what they've gotten for the last 27 and a half years.
Question 25. It has been said that America has hundreds of years of readily available oil, coal, and natural gas. Do you believe the United States of America should become energy independent, and if so, how would you approach this endeavor?
We have the capability to be energy independent. We certainly should be more energy self-sufficient. Whether you want to be totally independent or not depends on the cost of becoming independent. If the federal government will stay out of the way and let the private sector in an environmentally safe way develop our natural resources, which we have in abundance, we can eliminate imports of foreign oil if we want to. So the real question is, what price do you want to pay for energy independence? With natural gas prices where they are now, we have a competitive advantage in exporting liquefied natural gas, which wasn't the case just say 6 years ago. If we don't let the Federal Environmental Protection Agency regulate hydraulic fracturing out of existence, the use of hydraulic fracturing in our shale oil is going to have the capability to double our domestic oil production in the next 5 to 10 years. If we use CO2 to go into old oil fields, we can probably get as much oil out of existing oil fields as we've already produced. So, our free market system has the technology, and our people have the intellectual capability to be energy independent if the political process wants that. If we took politics out of it in totality, then it'd be an economic decision, and I don't know at what price you might want to import some energy just because it's more cost effective to import it than to produce it in the United States. But we could bring energy prices. Oil today is about $100 a barrel. I think if we did an all-out domestic energy production push, again in an environmentally safe fashion, you could probably cut that in half, $50, $60 a barrel pretty easily. And between coal and oil and natural gas and wind power, solar power, and then some of these, there's some pretty exotic alternative energy sources out there, algae, things like that. We could be a net energy exporter to the world.
Question number 26. What is the worst problem facing the United States of America today, and how do you plan to address it?
Well, the worst problem we've already asked about, that's the budget and deficit financing. That's a cancer on our ability as a country over time to function. And you address it by reducing spending and ultimately balancing and putting some process in place to maintain balanced budgets except in true national emergencies. So, how do you address it? Budget reform, balanced budget constitutional amendment, an honest dialogue with the American people about some of the huge social spending programs, Medicare, Medicaid, a debate on national defense. The three big budget items are national defense, Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security would be a fourth. Social Security has a dedicated trust fund, but we've breached that the last 2 years with this reduction in the Social Security payroll tax, where we've had to take general revenue IOUs on. We haven't put real money into the trust fund. We put government IOUs in it, which we then just added to the national debt. So those, you've got to have. I trust the American people. If it's elected congressmen, senators, president, tell the American people what the truth is, I think over time the electorate will make the right decision or will accept right decisions. But as long as you tell people they can have something for nothing, they're going to want something for nothing, whether it's a food stamp benefit, an unemployment benefit, a Medicare benefit, a Social Security benefit, whatever that benefit is. You know, human nature, you know, if somebody wants to give you something that's positive in your life, you accept it. And the political process has been unwilling to have that dialogue with the American people that there's no free lunch. You know, Congress is elected for a 2-year cycle, the Senate for 4, the Senate for 6, and the President for 4. And of course, your state governments, the state reps are 2, the state senators are 4, in Texas the governor's 4. So you just, you know, you have a series of legislative decisions that are short-term and not long-term. Every now and then you've got to have a long-term decision, and we're at that point right now. On a lot of these federal spending policies, they're not sustainable. And you know, one of the reasons I stay in Congress is I think I have the intellectual ability, and I know I have the backbone to tell the truth to the voters and try to put forward alternatives that over time will address the problem.
Question number 27. Tell us your childhood, teenage, and college experiences that formed your character.
My childhood, teenage, and college experiences that formed my character.
Yes.
Well, my family, back 3 or 4 generations, I mean, we've been in Texas since the 1840s, so small town Texas, rural Texas, public schools. My parents, grandparents were all active in church, either Methodist or Baptist church, in the PTAs. Both my grandmothers were PTA presidents. My mother was a PTA president. My father was chairman of the board of the Methodist Church. My grandfather was. You know, I grew up in a Christian family that taught accountability and hard work. I started to work for real as a teenager when I was 14. I worked for my uncle's store, Spiegel store in Bait House outside of Waco, Texas. I worked my way through college on a gift deal opportunity award scholarship at Texas A&M. I worked in the co-op engineering program at LTV and Houston Lighting and Power. So, you know, never took any unemployment or welfare benefit, even though probably, as far as I know, none of my family has, although we probably technically qualify. I don't think my dad ever made more than $20,000 a year. So, you know, hard work, be honest, be accountable.
Okay. Question number...
And be happy. You know, we weren't...
Yeah.
I don't want to sound like... I really had a very happy childhood. And I wouldn't change it.
Okay. Question number 28. What are the top 3 priorities in your life?
Well, the top priority is you know, my family, my wife and children. My mother's 87 and has Alzheimer's. So, number one would be my family. The number two would be, my duties, my obligation to the country as a United States representative. And I guess number, I don't know that it'd really be a number three. Your faith plays a role in both of those, certainly in your family and how you do things. If you do those, if you take care of your family and do in my case, my job responsibilities are governmental to the country and the state and local district, but if you do those two, I don't think you need a third priority.
Okay, the last section, In God We Trust. Question number 29. Are you different in your professional life than in your personal life?
No.
And the last question, number 30. Do you think lying is prevalent in Congress? Is there a difference between lying, spin, and not telling the whole truth?
What a question. I don't think many congressmen actually lie. I mean, it does happen, but it's pretty rare. I think there is a lot of avoidance, half-truths. We have what we call non-intersecting conversations. You very seldom have a real debate on an issue on the floor of the House. One side, whatever their talking points are, and the other side, whatever their talking points are, and they really don't intersect. It's very rare when you can actually have a dialogue. You have it more in committee. I spend a lot more time on issues in the Energy and Commerce Committee than I do on the floor. I don't speak a lot on the floor. But in terms of, well, let's see if I can give you an example. You mentioned Solyndra here a few questions back. I've been a real advocate of a thorough investigation. And when we hold hearings, the Republicans and people like myself will talk about taxpayers have lost over $500 billion, and the White House is not, we've sent a subpoena to the White House for any and all documents, any and all, and that they haven't complied. Well, the Democrat response to that is, we've given you thousands of documents. Most of them are repetitive, most of them are very mundane subjects, but they say, we've given you thousands of documents, why isn't that enough? Instead of saying, we say we want everything, they say we've given you 1,000. We say the taxpayers have lost $500 billion, and they say, sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. So you don't really have a debate, and neither side is lying. You're accentuating the Keystone Pipeline. We say it makes absolute sense to build that pipeline. And the president says, I don't have enough information on the route. And we say, but you're the one who said the route needed to be changed. And he says, I can't make up my mind until I know what the new route looks like. I mean, it's just, you go around in circles. And that's where, when I say, if we get the information to the American people, they'll sift it through. And, but to go back to your basic question, do people just, members of Congress just flat lie? Very rarely. Very rarely. Because if you do that, you don't have any, you don't believability over time. I mean, I have huge fights with John Dingell, a Democrat from Michigan, and Ed Markey, Democrat from Massachusetts. But they know I'm telling them the truth, and I know they tell me the truth. And we know that they're going to accentuate certain things, and I'm going to accentuate certain things. But if we have a real debate, then the American people will look at both sides and decide what makes sense. But you can't be successful in Congress if your pattern of behavior is to be consistently or even fairly routinely misleading. People just tune you out. They won't. You have no credibility. You can't get anything done. On the other hand, if they know your word means something, even when they disagree with you, they'll give you the benefit of the doubt. And I probably shouldn't say this. And I won't. It would do no good. So.
Okay.
I will tell you something off camera, but I'm not going to tell you right now.